Are you a control freak like everybody else? Is your husband a control freak? Okay. Actually, we're a control freak. This started late, and I'm a control freak, and it started late. We are going to learn today what our Masora has to say, what our tradition says about being a control freak and how not to be a control freak, or how to make it work for you in your life. It is going to be unbelievable. We have a very, very special lady on the show today who's going to be, you're going to be like a fly on the wall in a mentoring session where I walk a control freak through her issues and come out the end in a beautiful way with a lot of tips and techniques on how to get over this. Stay tuned. It's going to be a great show. This is the Get Real Show with Leah, and we've got this. That is a synthesizer. What that synthesizer does is it takes a woman who has volunteered to come on the show. You are eligible also. We'd love to have you. Just email us at info@ladiestalkshow.com. You can be on the Ladies Talk Show. It's a free mentoring session, and we give lots of insight. And having people the ability to watch you grow is what is so powerful. I mean, you'll see, it's very, very powerful. So you will not know who this lady is. We give her a fake name. We give her a fake number of years married, a fake number of kids. She's totally anonymous, so she can share her feelings, and you'll see her voice. She sounds like the Witness Protection Agency. That's what we're going to do today. Let me tell you a little bit about Hannah. Hannah is married 19 years. She's got two boys. You know, this is all made up. Wink, wink, but it's close to wherever. Two boys, ages 14 and 16. And she's got two issues that she's dealing with her husband. And both of them are totally relatable. One is that the first problem that she has is that she feels like she spent the last 19 years building a castle. And her husband was off at work and doing his thing and a workaholic a bit and whatever. He was doing his thing. And now he's home with COVID. He's not out of the house. He's there 24/7. He's used to managing a dozen people. Now he's managing the kids. She feels like he's taking a bat and crashing down all the years, all the work she's done. He's crashing through this glass castle that she built, single-handedly. So some of the examples that she gave is for the kids to wear. Don't go out of this house without a sweater. Don't chew with your mouth open. Don't leave your books on the table. He's micromanaging these kids like they're 6 and 9 years old, and they're 14 and 16. So here we've got teenagers, and he's treating them like they're kids because he wasn't there for the last 20 years managing the kids. He was there, and he was off doing her own thing, and she had to step up to the plate by herself and raise these kids with a very positive attitude. She's from a foreign country, and in that country, everyone raises with negativity and "you're so stupid. Why don't you do that better?" That's how her husband was raised, and that's how she was raised. And she made it her business to learn what is it to raise a kid with a positive self-esteem and in uplifting, instead of saying, how come you did that? It's like, another way to do it might be this way. So she has a whole philosophy that she's been implementing for 20 years, and he comes along with a baseball bat and he's crashing everything down. That's her first problem. Okay, got it? Sarit, you with me? Okay, yes, okay. The second issue is that she has been in control, running things. She's very, let me tell you, ladies, capable woman does not begin to describe. She is a hot shot. If I were to tell you she was a Supreme Court judge, I wouldn't be far from the truth. Really a go-getter lady. She's used to being in charge. She's used to running the show and being in control, and being a control freak actually has worked for her. Okay, it works for many of us. Micromanaging every detail is a way to sort of feel in control. So she has done this very successfully in her life. And now she felt there was something missing in the sense of having a husband, like the husband being the husband and she being the wife, rather than being the, superhero, superwoman. She wants to a little bit look up to him and wants to sort of feel like he's got her back and feel like he's supporting her, as a man, can only do for a woman. A woman can do it for a man, but it's different. And then she read Marriage Secrets, which is am I pointing in the right direction? Marriage Secrets is the book I wrote on there are 220 Torah sources on marriage, on how our 3,000-year-old track record of success of how to have an awesome marriage. So she read that, and she's like, all these years I've been the superhero. I would love to be able to, look up to my man and be supported by my man and be vulnerable a little bit and lean on him a little bit. I'd love that. So she started trying that, and it did not go very well. So she said she was not feeling well. She wasn't feeling like herself. And he's like, you'll be fine. And that was like it. She got of support from her husband. It's just, she's upset about that. Now that COVID hits, she feels a lot more vulnerable. She's never felt vulnerable. She's an invincible woman. She's an awesome woman. And she's never allowed herself to be vulnerable. And she hasn't. And so her husband, she's kind of in a way trained him not to let her be vulnerable, right? So this is the situation she finds herself in. Number one, her husband is not being, her husband's crashing it down. And in her words, he's making my life unbearable. She said, let me see what else she said. I just want to make sure I'm not, she says, I know I'm a control freak, but I will be happy to give him control as long as he does things exactly how I want him to do them. Okay, that's where we're holding with this. That's a first problem, is the crashing her castle. The second issue is that she is not able to be the receiver, and we know from our Masorah that all bracha, all blessing, comes from Shemayim, from God, through the husband and to the wife. This is for people who are listening to this first time. They're like, what are you talking about? It's very clear and it's very powerful. It gives women the ultimate power to understand the levers and dials of running her life in a powerful way, and gives her the control. She doesn't become the victim. She has a lot more control in her life. So she wants to be the receiver for all that blessing. Her husband isn't letting her. Maybe she's trained him not to let her, but the point is she's really trying and he's not letting her. Okay, those are the two issues. With that, I would like to welcome Hannah. Thank you so much for being on the show, Hannah.
Thank you for having me.
Yay, did I get it right? Did I summarize what we discussed accurately?
Yes, thank you so much for that.
Is there anything that you would like to add to what I said?
I think you've done a fabulous job summarizing my troubles.
Well, you gave it all over to me. I just take good notes. So that's it. Okay. So the first question I want to ask you, and let's start with the control issue, because that's what everybody's here for. Everyone wants to listen. Well, this is control freak detox, so how are we going to do it? So let's just take a look at it. And anybody who's watching, you should also in your mind introspect about the questions I'm going to ask. And if you have questions for me specifically or for Hannah specifically, type them in, and Hannah and Sarit will answer them for you. Sarit will ask them to me. Okay, so you're on. You hear me?
Yeah. And actually, it's so interesting, Leah, because I feel like as you were describing everything that Hannah's going through, I feel like I'm also a control freak. You know that I like things very controlled in my life, and I'm the one that's definitely the stronger one in my home, and everything runs according to my sort of ship. But I do find that with this whole corona, like all control is gone. It's almost like God said, sorry, the world has no control, and don't think you have any. And so it's very interesting. It's going to be interesting to hear how to kind of, internalize that in your own home.
Yeah, and also we have a lot of tips and techniques of exactly how to deal with that at this time. So it's fantastic. But the first question that I have for you, Hannah, is, can you pinpoint in your history or in your childhood or your family of origin or whatever, where you came with, you can't be vulnerable, that it's not okay to be vulnerable? Let's start there. And everybody should be thinking about this in their own mind. So go ahead, Hannah.
I grew up in a vulnerable culture, but people that were vulnerable, they didn't make it far in life. So being vulnerable was acceptable, but it was not something that would be conducive to your life.
The conducive to what?
To your success in life.
I see. So you saw jettisoning, getting rid of the vulnerable aspects of your personality were a better way to be more successful.
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. Okay.
Vulnerability was a synonym for weakness.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty accepted worldwide. I mean, vulnerability is what leads to closeness, but it's poo-pooed and looked down upon by the world. So I totally get that. The question I have for you is, you basically, your coping strategy for running your family for the last 19 years, has been to micromanage everybody and to control everything and everybody, right?
Yes,
And that has actually worked for you.
it worked
That's
very well.
right. That strategy worked for you. So now you're in a situation where you can't micromanage every detail because your husband's home 24/7. Why? So I'm going to ask you a very deep question. Why do you think God made this happen to you? What could be potential reasons? And this is a good question to ask ourselves anytime when something bad happens and you can point directly, my husband's the one who's doing this to me, or my boss, or my mother, or my mother-in-law. Whenever you're in a situation where you feel almost victimized by an individual person, it's very, very powerful to ask the question, why did God do this to me right now? Why? What is he trying to teach me? What does he want me to know?
I think since I am allowing myself to be vulnerable on the show, I'm going to suggest that perhaps I attributed my success by my micromanaging and doing everything right. Perhaps I did not give enough credit that it's God who runs the world and not me. And thus, perhaps right now, things are not going the way I would want them to go, and still we wake up and the next day it comes, and it seems like perhaps it was not as much of my success, it was a gift from the Almighty God. Maybe this is the idea.
You just stole the second half of the show. It's exactly where where we're heading, is a depth of understanding of control. Because one of the things, and I'll go through, let me just think for a second. One of the things that people who need control freaks. I consider myself, a lot of people, I think everyone probably is control freak to a certain degree, and certainly about certain things. You know, they like their soup a certain way, or their cereal has, the milk can't be too mushy, and it's, you know, so everyone's got their control areas and pockets or whatever, and then they're control freaks, and you know, that might be the definition of somebody who's needs to control everything outside of themselves, is certainly in their own environment, in their home, in their work environment, or whatever, has to be has to go the way that they believe is the best way. Most control freaks do not feel like they're control freaks. I mean, they might know it on a superficial level, I'm a control freak or whatever, but from a deep standpoint, control freaks have the sense that the reason it should go their way is because their way is better, and it probably in many cases is. If they're being control freak about how to drive, it's because their husband keeps cutting people off, and because they're, you know, he crosses the line and goes back, stay in one lane already, guy, you know, whatever. So their way could perhaps be termed better way. They run the dishwasher with the dishes facing towards the water spritzing, you know, instead of the other way around. Their way is often is better. So control freaks often think that their way of being has to do with being responsible, thinking things through seriously and carefully, being doing what they say they're going to do, being dependable. All of these things lead them to feel like the reason they're in control is there's a noise that's going on. I think whatever you're is that from her? Yeah, Hannah, can you just sit still? It's echoing in the show. Sorry. So people who are control freaks often don't feel like control freaks. They think that they are what do you call it? That everything they're doing is just smarter way of doing things, which might be true. But the control freak aspect is usually traced to some fear or some anxiety about fear of the future. And by micromanaging everything in their life, they feel a sense of control, a sense of less vulnerable to outside things that are going on. It gives them a sense of control over their environment. Totally understandable where it's coming from. If you don't know that's where it's coming from, I mean, perhaps, you know, somebody who's raised by parents who just, they never knew what was going to happen, and everything was spontaneous, and there were changes, and this happened, and they were just shifted and thrown around all over the place. And because of that, they land up feeling like they need to have control, so if a control freak doesn't understand the history, they don't understand how they got to where they are and what it's costing them in terms of pushing people away, because things have to be their way or the highway. If people don't understand that, then they're kind of handicapped because they've got a blinder on and they don't know how to interact in a way that's powerful and successful. So what does that mean for you?
Leah, what about if your control freak is coming from not necessarily a vulnerability, not necessarily fear, meaning you just, even as a young child, you always did things independently. You were very independent. You did things your way and they worked well. So you got to a place where you know that your system works and you get things to happen. You're efficient and you get things done. And when someone else takes over, they mess up. So,
right.
So you end up just being like, why am I going to let them mess up? Let me just do it my way because it's the right way. So is that bad? Because you're not really coming from a fear factor. You're coming from like, you really think that you're doing it right.
Yeah, 100%. So here's the differential, and this is a very, very fine line. Your drive, being a control freak is also, like I said to Hannah, that's a strategy that can work. You know what I mean? It's like controlling everything and managing can work up until the point that it doesn't. Up until the point that you get a little bit more stressed than you otherwise could. You haven't developed the skills to depend on other people, to delegate to other people, to take input from everybody. So it works if in a perfect, not perfect world, because the world is perfect, but in a perfect scenario, a perfect crucible, doing what you're saying works beautifully, Sarit. But the drawback is the minute one little thing doesn't go the way that you want it to, extra stress comes on, you yourself get extra tired, so you just can't. Your husband does it the exact wrong way. He always puts the wrong forks in the wrong thing, and he puts you can't find anything because he puts it back in the wrong place. So the strategy on a micro level can work on particular projects, but as a general overall lifetime strategy, being a control freak costs you not only just in your own ability to day-to-day life and be content and this is contentment, okay? Not only not having that contentment, but this is the worst issue. It pushes your husband further and further away, and your children, everybody pushes them away because they don't feel a participant. Everybody knows if you start the very first day in MBA, and I don't have an MBA, but if the very first day that you go into business school, they're going to say the most important thing is to get buy-in from your staff. You have to, everybody on team has to feel like they participate, like they're part of it, like they, that's the way to maximize their potential, to maximize the company's potential, to have every individual person on your team feel validated and like they're contributor, rather than they're just doing exactly what you said. No. Okay, so they're not going to do it exactly the way you're going to want it. They're going to maybe do it worse, but a lot of times they're going to do it better. So you get a lot more juice out of life by being able to let go of a lot of stuff, certainly for your own serenity. So to answer your question about what if it's not driven from a bad childhood where we can always blame everything on our parents, much easier that way. But let's say that's not it, and you're just doing it because that happens to be a strategy that works in your life for success, as Hannah was saying and as Sarit was saying. I get it, and that's terrific. You should know, you should go forward, you should use that strategy where it's applicable and where it's going to maximize your effectiveness. But where it's going to diminish your closeness to your husband and your closeness to everybody around you and your staff or your boss or whoever it is around you, your family members, where it's going to affect it negatively, that's where you need to be able to see with your own eyes, this is what I'm doing, and it's not what I want to be doing. I want to be closer. So this leads right into our next issue with Hannah, which is the issue that she wants to be vulnerable with her husband. She wants to be the receiver from her husband, and she doesn't know how to break the 19-year habit of how to make that happen. In other words, she has almost in a way trained her husband not to let her be vulnerable because she's an independent woman. She can do it all herself. She's a super woman, right? So she has ended up training him to hands off. So my next question for Hannah, when your husband, you were saying that what is making your life unbearable at this point is that you have successfully for the last 19 years, I keep saying 20, for the last whatever year, couple of decades, you have been raising the kids a certain way with a certain positivity. Now your husband's home and he's coming in throwing a lot of negatives. He's treating them poorly. He's kind of ruining their relationship with them because they don't want to deal with it. They're teenagers, and he's coming in with a sledgehammer, and you've been giving it a deft touch for the last 19 years. So my question for you, Hannah, are you ready, Hannah?
Yes.
My question is, how do you know what makes you so certain that what your husband is doing is wrong? That him sitting there telling him, stop chewing with your mouth open, put a sweater on before you go out there, and him treating them like a 6-year-old. What makes you convinced that that is ruining everything you've built for the last 20 years?
I don't know. I just feel like I was running the show, and it was very important for me to break through the cycle of, negativity and criticism and putting a child down when they were growing up. So when I see that behavior displayed in other people, it takes a lot for me to not judge and not comment. Sometimes if it's a close friend, I might find an opportunity to, guide them a little bit and tell them that maybe you should be a little more gentler. And this started happening in my own household, so I feel very broken and resentful.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me an example, but fake the example, change the example from reality, the key facts, so that you're still anonymous?
Sure. For example, my husband, who's been not so involved in the last 19 years, he doesn't know so well about the schedule of the children. And let's just say they worked late last night and they're sleeping in, and he might walk into the room and start, right away aggressively confronting them. Why are they in bed at 12 o'clock in the afternoon? And he doesn't know what was before or after because he wasn't involved, but he's criticizing a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what makes you certain that's not good for them?
Because this type of philosophy of being positive and encouraging and uplifting is not a natural thing to me. I grew up in a very negative and critical culture. I worked so hard to create this kind of maybe castle of positivity for them. And it's very scary for me that it will be shattered by my husband, and they won't know how to react to all this negativity and demeaning behavior.
I hear exactly what you're saying. What makes you certain that is a bad thing? What makes you certain that you're right about the fact that this will not be good for them?
I grew up in a negative culture, and it wasn't good for me.
Okay.
That's my answer.
So you're saying, based on your experience, you are absolutely certain that his negativity is going to be damaging to your children.
I cannot be certain of that, but I can be certain of the fact that negativity was damaging to me. It still is.
So, by the way, Leah, you're getting a lot of hearts and thumbs up. And on Facebook, on Torah Anytime's Facebook, Eva Levy said, love this podcast. And someone else said, loving this. So, Hannah, I think your story is resonating with a lot of people.
Yeah. Thank you, Hannah. It's good. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
You're so sweet. And thank you to the lady. Can you text them back or whatever and say, yay, thank you, love you, thanks, bye.
Yeah, they hear you. So
oh, no, good. Okay.
They're hearing you sending the love. Yeah,
yay,
no, it's
yay.
very
Okay, good.
It's very powerful.
Very good. Okay, so but I'm just going to go back to this is that I'm just asking you, Hannah, to question. I get it, the negativity. I get what I'm just like, if we ask that question that I said, when you're in the middle of a thing, if you ask, why would Hashem be having me do this? And you answered very well before, but now, like, why would God want your children to hear the messages of negativity? I mean, in other words, I'm not convinced. See, the thing about being a control freak is that we are really, really, really convinced that the way we are running it and is the way it really needs to be. That's the best way. But there's a point where you recognize God has other plans. I mean, you know, here's COVID, here's your husband, right smack in the middle. The kids are 14 and 16, right? Why would God do this? For 19 years, you've raised him in a certain way. Here, now at a critical juncture of teenage angst and whatever, you know, teenagers, okay? Why would God make it so that now, boom, right in the middle of all that you've done, right here, there's this whole, you said it was like your husband is giving them a tour through a haunted house, you know? So that's what you said to me in the pre-show interview. So the point is, what if God saw fit for this to happen, not that your husband has no volition and no choice and no whatever, not that you can't talk to your husband about it and have come to some kind of an agreement. I'm just starting from point one, from ground zero. Your assumption that you are correct may have zero basis. Now, maybe you could get 100 psychologists to line up and say, oh, much better for the kids if they follow her castle and whatever. Maybe you could find 50 or maybe only 2 psychologists who said it's good, give the kids a dose of reality. We know one thing. Women are, for the most part, softer and handle things deftly. We're really good in relationships, whatever. Men are harsher. They hammer at us. They might say something to like, oh, I'd change that outfit if I were you. And you're devastated for a year, you know, whatever it is, you know, I was just telling you a fact. I like the one you wore yesterday. What's the problem? You know, that's a known fact. I'm not being sexist or being, you know, pigeonholing or being discriminatory. It's just as an overall generalization, which may be not the greatest thing to do, but if we keep it in mind, it'll help us in a great way. Your husband is being harsh with your kids. He's being harsh. For whatever reason, God gave a wife's softness and a husband's harshness. I don't know why. I don't know why God does many, many things. For this, that's what he gave you. So you're being so positive that you're right is really damaging you and your relationship with your kids and with your husband. Because maybe, just maybe, him banging on the door and saying, you lazy, what are you doing sleeping, you know, whatever. Maybe that's the thing that's going to echo in the kids' ears when they're off on their own and they're married and they've got a wife who's, you know, who's, or if it's his daughter or whatever, you know, they've got a spouse who's very upset by this. It's causing problems in their marriage or problems for their earning money, livelihood. Who knows? Who knows? But I wouldn't be so quick to say, I'm not advocating harshness. Believe me, if it's cases of abuse and whatever, please get yourself the help that you need. But I am saying there are 2 different ways of parenting, and God just made it very convenient that you've got a man and a woman, and both of them raise the kids. Now your husband was absentee, you know, you know. So I hear that. He's here now, and maybe the kids need to draw on his strength. Maybe they need to, maybe your mamby-pamby, everything's what, oh, it's wonderful you're sleeping in. I hear you were up late last night, dear sweetheart. Maybe that's not the best thing for the kids. Maybe the little bit of harshness is going to give them the exact motivation to, you know. So I'm just saying, you said the words out of your mouth were, he's making my life unbearable. And I want to turn it around to you, Hannah, in the nicest possible loving way and say, maybe you're making your life unbearable, not him. Maybe take this time to step back and let him do whatever he wants. Let him do it. He can't ruin anything. If you have teenagers, 14, 16 years old, even if you faked it and they're really 10 and 11, I don't know. I told you to please add a year or 2 or subtract a year or 2, whatever the age are. He's not going to ruin. They get your love. They get your husband's love. They get it. Maybe it's a time for you to just say, you know what? I'm just going to let him run with it. Now, it could be if it's really harsh and really negative and really bad, maybe you sit down with him and you say, listen, you're here, I'm over here. Can we come more somewhere in the middle? Can we you can, or before you go banging on the door, come and say, did the kids stay up late last night or did they go to bed on time? Because it's noon already and they're not awake. Maybe you can have an agreement that he's going to check with you. I don't know if that's also to me rings as micromanaging. Okay, rings as micromanaging. Oh, we should have a micromanage. This means you're micromanaging. Maybe this is a big test for you, the big control freaks, the big micromanager, the big whatever, or all of us who are listening, to just say, you know what, I'm just going to let it go. Now I'll tell you what will happen with that. Hannah, you said that your husband isn't letting you. You're feeling very vulnerable yourself. And like, I had my act together. Now with COVID, I can't go out. I feel paranoid. I'm scared of touching anything. And, you said you're having your own emotional drama and trauma from this time. I get it. Okay. Control freaks and the people who are very high functioning and accomplish a lot as you have done. Okay. Fall a lot harder when they're put in a situation where they have no control over it. It's just harder for us. Okay. It just is. So for you, if you just let go of how he's the baseball bat and crashing down or whatever, that's your vision. Maybe have another vision that he's got a feather duster and he's cleaning it up. I don't know. So the issue is, if you did that, maybe this other issue where he's not being supportive and letting you be vulnerable, that maybe that'll just naturally happen, because right now you are making him wrong and bad and like he's not doing it well. And if you just accept what he's doing, as long as he's not doing severe damage. And I don't think banging on a door and telling a teenager it's midday, get out of bed, that's seems to be reasonable. I don't know. Maybe there's parenting experts out there who will send me an email if you think we should handle it differently. But it's reasonable. It's reasonable for him to do that. If he's hitting them, God forbid, or doing something, then you got to really whatever. But certain things, chewing you with your mouth open, okay, they never heard it before. He was absentee. Maybe that's something they need to hear. But that on turn maybe will shift it so that he will be more allowing you to be the receiver on the woman's side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Leah, Zamora from Facebook, from the Attorneys on Facebook, actually said that I think the kids can definitely handle dad's negativity if they're trained with mom's positivity. And it's so interesting because that was actually what I was thinking when I wanted to ask, if I can ask Hannah a question. She was mentioning how she grew up with this negativity and it was so bad for her and negative for her. And she sees how damaging it could be. Did she have anyone, meaning out of both her parents, did she have anyone that was positive? Because in her case, she's been building them up with so much positive. So was she in the same boat, or was her entire upbringing negative on all ends?
Good question. You heard that, Hannah?
No, it was very muffled. If you can please repeat it.
Oh, yeah, no, did you have anyone, you grew up with negativity and turned out positive. Did you have anyone positive in your life to give you an example?
So as an adult, I made a decision to read as many books as I could, to seek therapy, to get life coach skills, and become a life coach myself. It was a lot of work, took about 25 years to move past that negativity. That's why it's very crucial to me that I raise children with strong self-esteem. And maybe I'm overdoing it. I hear you. I understand what you're saying. I understand, because I don't have this innate measuring bar that tells me maybe it's too much clapping and telling you good job. And maybe they do need a little bit of criticism. But because I don't know how much of what, I'm just very uncomfortable by adding the spice of criticism into their upbringing.
Did that answer your question, Sari?
Yeah, because I think obviously she's done a lot of work on it, but I think what you were saying to her is it's so true, meaning like Zamora from Facebook said, if kids were brought up with so much of mom's positivity, then having their dad's negativity at this point is not going to damage them.
Yeah. And it's doing more damage in your marriage than it will do to the kids.
I'm worried about also the relationship of my husband and the children, because he was more of like this superhero who is absent, always working, and they didn't know him that well. They didn't spend, 4 months 24/7 with him, and they see a lot of faults in him and a lot of unpredictable outbursts, and they don't like it, and they didn't know about that. So I'm worried that his image is also going to be shattered in their eyes, and I see that they look at him differently now.
That's so fantastic and so well articulated. But here's what I want you to know. You said you're afraid it's gonna shatter their image of him from who they thought he was to who he really is. And what's going to be more powerful in their life and in their strength growing up is knowing who he really is. Having an image of him, this, like you said, I don't know how to do what I'm supposed to do with that. It's dinging. Having this image of him as, the superhero and Superman and coming in gives them no power in their life to deal with their own emotions. They're like, well, my father was like this perfect person. And here I'm having all these things. I'm upset with my spouse. My kids are doing this. I don't like my boss and whatever. I'll never reach dad's level. And now
I understand your point, Leah, but the way he's responding is not always healthy. So if they're going to model that behavior, it's best that this is not the time when they learn from him, because he's very anxious himself and very unpredictable, and he might get upset over nothing. And I don't even think that's who he is. I think that's just anxiety of the world.
Right. Again, this is where you have Amuna. Amuna, how does Amuna translate, Sarit?
Huh? Faith, having faith and belief.
There's we're not meant to be automatons. We're meant to be, give life all we've got and try and maximize our potential and try and be as strong as we can and as great as we can and get over our pettiness. And, there's a lot of room for growth from where we are and who we are and who we want to be. And we're always hopefully growing and learning from others and listening to classes and going to classes and we're all growing constantly as much as we can in our lifetime. But here's the point, is that we're meant to have hishtadlus, which is efforts in our actions, but the end results we're meant to leave to God. We have no control. It's a fallacy. That's the issue with the control freak. We think we have control. We don't even have control. It looks like we have control because we fixed this and we got that kind of a pot and nothing burned. And we did all these things that led up to feeling like we were in control. And it's kind of a big illusion. We do our efforts, we do our hishtadlus, and then God provides the result. Even as much as, people say there's cause and effect. So you have nature, right? You pour water and it goes down. Feed a plant water, and it grows. So it looks like things are cause and effect. But from our sources, we know that there's no such thing as cause and effect. There's only God's hand. So we do this, and by nature, the laws of nature that God himself created. I'm getting very philosophical today, but I do have a point, okay? Is that, from nature, he set up these laws, and if we do this, this will happen. But so much in our, in other words, there's risk taking. You try this, it doesn't work. You try that, it does work. It's not like this one-on-one ratio of how science works. It's what's reasonable and expected. But the end result is completely in God's hands. So here's the take-home message for you, Hannah, that is the most important thing that you could learn in this whole class, which is if you go for peace, meaning you do whatever you possibly can to be close to your husband and to have peace in the home and to mavater, meaning just let it go the way he wants or whatever. If you dedicate yourself at this time in particular to just focusing on keeping peace in your home, it is guaranteed that God will take care of your children. That whatever negativity he's trying to infuse in them now, look, this is a matter of emunah, a matter of faith, but it's also a matter of understanding how the world works. It's kind of like, if we know from so many sources, there's 220 sources in there. Okay, we know from so many sources that if we focus on peace in the home and focus on taking care of our husband and focus on not being right and not controlling them, if we focus on that, God will bring blessing into our home. And that means our children will be happier. Our children will learn the right things that we need. You can't clock 20 years or 14 and 16 years on your kids and not have built them into who they are today.
May I ask you a question,
yes.
Hannah? May I ask you a question?
Yes.
So while I understand what you're talking about the laws of nature, I do think that raising children, it's not the formula for water, H2O, There is an opportunity for us to screw up, and I've seen many wholesome souls, unfortunately, not treated properly by parents, and they didn't grow up to be at their potential. So I do feel like
they grew up to be a better potential, you said?
No, I mean, the parents were mocking them and laughing and raising them in a terrible environment, based on my opinion, and the children are not flourishing if they have self-esteem issues. So I can say that H2O example, for me personally, is the same as raising children. Like, I know God runs the world, but as parents, we kind of help him raise our children. We do have to take responsibility.
Correct, but you're using the wrong levers and dials for what you're trying to accomplish in your life. You are focusing on taking care of the children to get good children. And what I'm telling you is an absolute fact that we have from our Masorah is it's instead of taking care of your children to raise your children, take care of your husband to raise your children. Meaning, if you focus on shalom bayis with your husband, the children are going to do fine. And this is borne out in so many sources and in scientific studies. I'm not so good in this in the quote that aspect of it, but a few people have wrote me emails and said, exactly what you're saying is hard to hear, but studies back up what you're saying. Even though the Torah says it, the studies prove that it's true. So am I telling you that if your kid is having trouble and you mavater, you forgive your husband for something that you've been upset with him for 10 years, that your kid's going to do better? Is that what I'm saying? Like, really? Really? That's the spiritual world. That's the world that we live in. And the gorgeous thing is, you do not have to take my word for it. You go and try this one time. You may not see instant results. You might have to do 20 to see one result, to see it with your own eyes. And maybe God will hide it from you or whatever, because there has to be some kind of the spiritual world isn't seen with your eyes. But I'm telling you, and I've had thousands of students, if you start taking better care of your husband, somehow, some way, your kid isn't going to be like, it bothers you that your kid's in bed till noon. Suddenly they'll, get a job they're really excited about. I don't know. I don't know how God runs the world. I just know that he does. And I'm telling you right now that what your focus is on the wrong thing. You're raising the children. You're saying, well, I want to raise them in the perfect way so that they're great. Take care of your husband, Hannah. Take care of your husband. Give him the space he needs. As you had said on the phone, I don't know if you said it today, that he was a little bit depressed because of his job. He's used to managing, all these people and running a company. I don't remember if you said he has his own company or runs a company. Anyway, he's home now doing nothing. And he's feeling a little, a man who's parked 2 decades into getting his self-esteem, not from raising the children or having a happy wife, although that's part of it. And the more you let him know how happy you are, the more satisfied in life he'll feel. And fake it till you make it, if you have to tell him it, let that grow. Getting off on the topic. But I'm just saying, for this area, you said he's got a little bit depressed. If you let him be depressed and say, is there something I can do for you? Or you want to go for a walk? Take care of him. Take care of him. And a lot of the things that are bothering with the kids, and let him, if he's a little harsh with the kids now and they know the real him instead of the image they thought of, daddy, Tati is this really, they have a certain image. Let that go. Let it go. Okay, we have time for another.
By the way, Leah, just a few comments. We've got so much coming through from all ends. Okay. So Hannah, just so that you know, our Torah Anytime NT said, the woman being interviewed is very self-aware and has such clarity of thought, so inspiring. So you're really inspiring a lot of people. We had Kinsley Party of 3 on Instagram who actually said it's so valuable that women are able to come on and share because so many are struggling right now. So it's so powerful. But she said, I think it could be a lot more complicated than just taking care of the husband. The wife needs to be taken care of too. So obviously that she's feeling that obviously Hannah, even when she's trying to do everything and be so accommodating to her husband, she would have to obviously have a place to take care of herself. And hopefully this show is doing just that because she has a place to talk. And we have Aliza Castell on Facebook who said, even our feelings and thoughts are directed by Hashem. So if we can really internalize your message of like Hashem put her into this situation right now, it could be so valuable.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, ladies, for all the sharing. It's fabulous. But I want to talk about self-care a little bit because there's a big thing these days or whatever. And I just want to make sure people understand that self-care is crucial and very important. Women should really take care of ourselves. None of us do, right? There was a big big rabbi. Somebody says, he said, we don't need, in this generation, we don't need alarms to wake us up. We need alarms to go to bed. You know, we're up till 11. Oh, one more thing, 12, with 1:30, and we have to wake up at 6:30 or whatever it is, you know. So we don't take very good care of ourselves. So we need to focus on that. But I will tell you, the first step of that just might be, I happen to believe it is, but this is something you have to try at home. The first step of self-care might be taking care of your husband. I'll tell you why. Your husband right now, you said one of the hardest things for you is he's not there and he's not supportive for you. You're feeling vulnerable. You're feeling stressed. People who are control freaks have a lot of difficulty with change. And this is like, could you ask for a bigger change? You know? So for you to adjust to this, you feel like you've been saying you have no support. If you begin to take better care of your husband in terms of letting him be, don't make him feel like you're disappointed with him and all the time. Don't make little snide comments. Don't like when he roll his eyes if he says something that's harsh to the kids. Don't berate him for every little thing he does. Chill out. Let him just say, okay, it's from Hashem. I'm gonna get the duct tape. You know, here we go. You know, I'm gonna go like this. You know, if you do that, I bet you something very powerful will happen. As you take more care of your husband just naturally wants to give to you, and he will turn around. It might take time because you have 20 years of history where you wouldn't let him even go there. Anytime he tried to take care of it, he's like, I got it. I got this. Thank you. I got this. Okay. So he's been burned and shot, and he like you touch your stove and it burns, you're not going to touch it so often. So, you know, it might take time for him to ease into it. But I'm telling you right now, if you start taking more care of him, he will get your back and you'll be able to take better care of yourself. He'll say, you know, I can't believe it. Like all yesterday you did this, then that, whatever. Go for an hour. I was going to say, go get your nails done, but who's getting their nails done these days, right? So I don't know, maybe in other parts of the country here, we're still in lockdown or shut down, whatever. So the point is, for the self-care aspect of it, the homework is still the same, to take care of your husband. Hannah, do you have any last questions before we end the show today?
It's not a question, it's more of a statement. You've asked me why I feel that God has put me in this position.
Yeah.
It's a very humbling realization. I think I'm going to just let go and let God, as they say. And I'm going to take your advice. And I'm going to believe that even if things are seemingly out of whack and completely not as I'd like them to be, with positivity and smiles and clapping, a good job, things will still work out if I just believe that this too is from God.
It's fantastic. Good on you. Isn't that inspiring, guys? Isn't that inspiring? Like, wow, I'm really proud of you. And, you know, I will tell you, it's one of the things I feel very lucky I get to see in my work here is that when women there is such a drive to be right and to, to know and to, whatever. When women just let go a little bit, let's both let go, let God, but also let their husband feel like he's in control. I know, politically incorrect to talk about this without, kind of out of context, but because we have a lot of shows about control and how women are driven in this society to feel like you need control. Like everybody wants control. Are you crazy? And really for a woman, if you examine this and look deep within you, and it may not be true for everybody, but for most women, what's far more important than control is connection. And when they have that connection, there's a part of them, a deep part of them that just, I don't really care so much if the dishwasher gets unloaded the wrong way or loaded the wrong way, or that, it's just, there's a connection there that fills, that's the gaping hole inside, and when you have that connection, there's not so much need for control. And men, and that's not true for everybody, and I don't want to say blanket statements, but if you understand the deep reality of how God created the world, this is not Leah Richeimer making this up. This is a 3,000-year-old track record of awesome success of marriages. But for a man has to feel like he's got control. If a man does not feel like he has control of his home, of his wife, of his children, of his world, of his work, and he feels like he's being bossed around or shoved around or pushed around, or control freak is controlling him. If a man feels that, he feels like a shadow of his former self. And I've dealt with a lot of students who say, my husband won't get a job, and our parnasa, our money has been so bad, and da-da-da. And, I'm not saying that there's a show Sarit wants me to do called How to Make Your Husband Rich. So I got to do that. It's on the agenda. But how can a woman make her husband rich? Give him control. Just give it to him. Give it to him. We think we need it. We really, really don't need it. And when a man gets it, I'm telling you, you want flowers. You want him to just cherish you and love you and cleave to you. It's give him control. It's everyone says respect. Yeah, respect is sure important. That's equally important to a man and important to a woman as well. But control, for some reason, men were born with that. And if you have the strength to give it to them, you'll see you have something far more valuable than control, which is influence. And you would say, I think we should get this car, and blah, blah, blah. No, think we should get that car, and you're fighting. And you say, whatever you think is best, dear. It's like, well, which one do you think we should get past? It's just how it is. You just gain the influence, and it's much more precious because your husband has exactly what he needs, and you for the most part you get everything that you need also. So that's the end of that. Okay, any last things, Sarit? Oh, wait, you're muted. Hello.
No. We had totally somebody writing, Damar writing, totally right, 100%, lots of hearts, and people saying that it's important to learn, and hopefully Hannah's going to take it to the extreme. Like I said, when you told me to do it, take it to the extreme, and you are able to then find a good balance afterwards once you...
Right, yeah. So what Sarit's talking about, this may be a couple of years ago or something, Sarit asked me about the control issue, and I said, give it all to him. Then you can take little bits back if you need to, but it's so freeing. I had a woman who told me that she had all this, anxiety in her neck and her, whatever, all the time. She just felt bottled up with nothing was going the way the minute she let it go and let her husband let God, let her husband do whatever, and just chilled about it, her stress level went way down. Now, things were not done the way she wanted them to do. She said, sometimes she let him do the lights for Shabbos, and the bathroom light was on, and it's like, okay, so she didn't harp on him and micromanage. She said, okay, this is what it's meant to be this week. So this is the homework. The homework is to do your best, everybody who's listening, and Hannah especially, and thank you so much for being with us, Hannah. You are such a precious thing, is to just let go and try it out and see how it works for you.
Yeah, Leah, Vicky on Facebook said, great show. Thank you. And very valuable, very valuable.
Thank
So,
you, Vicky.
Hannah.
Thank you. Mwah. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you
You're a
so
doll.
much.
You added so much to
Thank
all
you
of our lives. Thanks
for
a
your
million.
wisdom.
This is Leah Richeimer for the Ladies Talk Show.